Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And with this one, I wanted to bring you a Resto Druid PvP commentary. So the purpose of this video is to bring you a match through my perspective, my thoughts, and my actions, and what I'm doing and thinking to be able to achieve victory, so that you can take that information and then apply it to your own gameplay, or you can just watch it simply for the entertainment factor of it. But if you want to stay up to date with news and updates and patch changes for World of Warcraft and enhance your experience, then make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's just going to let you notify you when my videos go live, and maybe even pique your interest in WoW in the future as well if you've left at this time. But other than that, without further ado, let's get started. So in this clip, I was playing with a Fire Mage and an Arms Warrior. I am fighting against a Feral Druid, an Arms Warrior, and a Discipline Priest. So this is going to be the perspective of melee cleaves, or how to fight against Feral Druids and Arms Warriors, what I'm thinking about, and how to deal with them. So some important things about Feral Druids to know is that they heal a lot, which means trying to kill them can be very difficult. I would not really recommend it. It is a lot better to control them with Cyclone, Hibernate, and Stuns to prevent them from healing, prevent them from attacking, and then go after other targets. And this is going to be very effective against this particular composition because they have a healer, which is the Discipline Priest, which will run out of mana if we can prevent the Feral Druid from healing. But if we are unable to, the Priest will maintain quite a hefty amount of mana, healing through Atonement and allowing the Feral Druid to get the big pick-me-up regrowth heals. So my main objective in this match is to try and control the Feral Druid and control the Warrior. Roots, Hibernate, Cyclones. You got to think about using as much crowd control as possible against these melee cleaves. So at the start of the fight, I don't really want to come out of stealth right away. This way, the Feral Druid can't stun me from stealth. I can kind of see where they're coming. So as soon as the Feral Druid opens, I innervate Overgrowth, and this allows me to get all of my heal over time effects up, and it'll allow me to tank some early crowd control quite comfortably. Adaptive Swarm out on the target. Now they're swapping off of the Overgrowth to my Mage, which is why I've saved my Cenarian Ward just in case they switch. But then I just start spamming Hibernates. As soon as I see the Feral Druid out of Hibernate dispelled, I start spamming Cyclones. I just want to get the Feral Druid out of the match as much as possible. I can see damage committed to the Mage here with the Warbreaker, so I'm going to use Cenarian Ward on the Mage, and I'm going to Swift Mend the Mage, and that's going to extend the Cenarian Ward, and it's going to pretty much heal them while I can do other things, like try and help my Warrior kill their War Banner, but if I need to, I can still use Regrowth. Here I tried to use Ursul's Vortex to pull the Feral down on the jump, ended up missing it, but that is something to try to do. Then I bashed the Feral Druid. I should have used this bash a couple of seconds later because I could have chained it into a Hibernate. Now, Druids can cancel form. Here you can see it to avoid your Hibernate, so you want to be aware of that. Now the Berserk is up. This is the very scary cooldown from the Feral Druid. And I see the Feral Druid attacking me. So I want Adaptive Swarm on myself whenever I think I'm the target. This is going to bolster my automatic Frenzied Regeneration. So when I get punched really low health, I'm going to Frenzy Regen, and it's going to be super powered with that Adaptive Swarm. So I preemptively get that set up on myself, just in case they go after me. My other targets have other cooldowns like Die by the Sword or Cauterize or sometimes Alter Time. So I'd rather make sure that I'm safe, and I need to be away from the Priest because Mind Games is going to be lethal to me. So you can see I'm playing far away from the Priest. I'm just getting heal over time effects up. As soon as I'm feeling comfortable with the heal over time effects, then I can look for crowd control. I start moving towards the Priest because they're moving towards me, and I look for a Cyclone, and this will remove the Priest from play. However, the Feral Druid is still going to heal a lot, so then I immediately move to try and Hibernate the Feral, and if they're just constantly shapeshifting in and out of Cat, they're also not healing. So just getting control of the Feral Druid, removing them with control, I think is going to be much better, but I see the Druid attacking me, don't know if I'm going to be the target, so I Adaptive Swarm myself, again, to bolster up that automatic Frenzy Regen, and I try Hotting myself. So they go for the stun, and they start blasting me down a little bit, but the Warrior isn't here. I end up using Bark Skin when I see the Warrior Heroic Leap because I don't want both of them to be committed to me in a stun. I Cenarian Ward Swift Mend, and that way I am now basically not going to die. I don't need to worry about myself. I can now start putting heal over time effects on a different target. The Cenarian Ward plus Swift Mend is kind of you can tell that person to do whatever they want because there's no way they're going to die. Here we polymorph the Priest, so I'd love to be able to Hibernate the Feral Druid. This way we remove the Feral Druid from healing, we remove the Priest from healing, and now the Warrior doesn't heal, and the Warrior is going to get very dangerously low. So my Mage is controlling the Priest. I'm going to move to Hibernate Feral. If they shapeshift out, then I'm going to Cyclone the Feral, and then I want to switch that Cyclone to the Priest when I'm able to, or maybe use a Bash to let that sit, but we end up using a Fear. So now I could use Bash on the Feral, but we end up getting Trinket from Priest, and you can see how much scarier that was for their team. So when you're fighting these DPS like Feral Druids and Ret Paladins, they do such a tremendous amount of healing, particularly Feral if you're a Druid, that you want to just control them. After your crowd control, go back to cleaving, just maximize your damage, try and put some pressure on the board. But when you're looking for those setups with your Storm Bolts, you want to be crowd controlling the hybrids, taking them out of the match. Another tactic is to use the Gladiator's Maledict trinket, but in this we decided not to. You want to dispel mind games off yourself. That again is probably the most threatening moment as a Druid. Any spec of Druid is mind games. You need to remove that. Here we see the Feral jumping to me, stunning me, and looking for a Cyclone. So I tell my teammates, my mage blinks over, assists me with the Dragon's Breath. Then I wanted to bash, but I ended up walking into an in cap. He ends up getting polymorphed on his Cyclone. But you always want to tell your teammates when the enemy is jumping at you, when they're trying to control you, so that they can help you. So whenever you see an enemy jumping at you, say, hey, this guy's pushing on me. Can anyone peel him? That type of communication is going to be very good, because then your teammate can look back and be like, oh yeah, I see that. I'm not tunnel visioned on something else. So as a healer, communicating that is very important, because if I'd gotten Cyclone there, who knows, that might have been an ice block or something from my mage. Here I use Ursul's Vortex to pin them away from me. I just want to get a Fleshcraft up right now because they have been attacking me. This way I'll have a little bit of a fortification with the shield. Then I move to clone the Priest while I'm immune to fear. Now we've removed the Priest from the game. We haven't removed the Feral Druid from the game, so the Feral can still heal the Warrior. So we need to try and hibernate. We're going to cast Hibernates on the Feral. They're dodging the Hibernates, and the banner is down, which reduces CC. It's probably not worth it. But you can see the Feral Druid just healed basically everyone on their team back to full health. So if we don't have that Feral under control, we're not executing for a kill. But still, the fallback strat is to run the Priest out of mana and play into dampening, where the Feral's healing isn't effective and the Priest can no longer do anything. Here the Priest steals Polymorph, something that I didn't think they were playing, didn't notice it, but if they're playing Thought Steal against you and you're playing with a mage, they'll be able to sheep you. You can see that on the frame over here. Sometimes it's a purple face icon, it's replaced. There's the Warbreaker, so we're going to Cenarian Ward, we're going to Swift Mend it. This target is now basically immune to death. We don't need to worry about it. So we're going to start hotting up the Warrior here, just because they should be swapping off of that effect. And we may need to start drinking because our mana is about the same with the Priest, and we're 3 minutes into the fight. So once you need to be drinking while the Cenarian Ward is rolling is the best opportunity. Tell your teammates that you're drinking. Tell them to try and crowd control the enemies while they're running at you to stop you, or to play defensive. That's when they should be thinking about using their personal defensives. So as a healer, you want to communicate that. Here we've got the Priest and a Polymorph. We're kind of cleaving the Feral and the Warrior, which isn't necessarily the best, but the Feral is also on diminishing return from Dragon's Breath. So I'm just going to jump over to the Priest, stun as soon as the diminishing return is over, and try and clone. Now their healer was likely doing what I was doing and saying, hey, help me, the Druid's jumping. So their Warrior stunned me to stop me from cloning. This then chained me into a fear. Another way to kind of remove that hybrid healing is to stun the Feral Druid, and we can utilize Sharpen Blade here, which is going to reduce the healing heavily, but still it's really hard to kill a Feral Druid, especially before dampening. We can see our Warrior in a stun lock here, so we're going to use the Cenarian Ward, and we're going to Swift Mend it. And now that Warrior is going to be fine. We can focus on crowd control. So we're going to start cycloning the Warrior. We're trying to bait trinkets. We're trying to get, some extra cooldowns out of them outside of our normal kill windows. It also allows our mage to more easily get crowd control on the Priest because they don't need to deal with the Warrior. So as soon as you know that target is safe, it's got a Cenarian Ward on it, you want to just be crowd control city. And you can see this Warrior now is kind of out of the game. I'm rooting them. I'm cycloning them. I'm rooting them until basically complete DR, waiting to see if they're avataring out of it to try and root their avatar effect. They end up waiting and spell reflecting, but it's still, the Feral Druid had to run away. We swap back to the Warrior. We get died by the sword immediately. And now we can try and crowd control the Feral. So we're casting Hibernates. We get the Feral Druid caught into a Hibernate, dispelled by the Priest. Again, if you can't cover both targets, if this stun on the Priest was 1 second faster, it would have worked out. We also got to a point where it started to feel like attacking the Priest would feel good. So if we can crowd control the Feral, who is basically doing all the heavy lifting with the healing, and we attack the Priest will have to use Shadow Mend. And if they use Shadow Mend too much, they will run out of mana. And you can see them casting Shadow Mend in the top side here quite a lot. And that's going to be a checkmate. And we also get to cleave 2 targets if they're attacking our Warrior. So now I want to just try and control the Feral as much as I can, keep dots on the Warrior and the Priest. And we ended up wanting to stack them up, cleave them, and crowd control the Feral. So I cycle on the Feral half duration, just trying to remove as many regrowths as I can, trying to catch a frenzied regen from them if possible, using most of my bashes into the Feral Druid. and then roots onto the warrior. And you can see that this playstyle is going to be a lot more fun too as a Resto Druid, just focused on controlling enemies. Here I'm feared far away. They're casting Mind Games. They're casting Berserk. This is a very scary moment in the game typically. Fortunately, they're attacking a mage. And yeah, mages are really hard to kill. So that situation may have been a lot scarier if they were attacking my warrior with no trinket. But my mage is going to easily survive and use alter time. So you want to be calling that out ahead of time if you're playing with a mage. Whenever you're feared or far away, it's enemy cooldowns. You say, hey, pre-alter time, think about using alter time. That's a good place to communicate that cooldown. And then we just start cleaving. We start getting to try and get on top of the priest. We're getting into dampening. We're still just trying to run the priest out of mana. We're still focused on controlling the feral. To try and close the game out, but they're doing a good job of intercepting crowd control and stopping us. I think they ended up DCing at this point, so we just ended up waiting. I usually just drink in these situations because I don't know if they're going to come back. I don't know what's going to happen. I figure as a courtesy of waiting, I get a little benefit of drinking a bit here. But in this position, you may have wanted to drink anyways. I actually forgot that this had even happened because this was such a long game. But getting drinks and getting to full mana is actually kind of more important than playing to win a lot of the time. And you've got to really be paying attention in these long games when you're going to 5 to 8 to 10 minutes, because you can end up losing just because you didn't think about drinking earlier on and you got excited about trying to win the game. It's much more important to focus on maintaining your mana. And maybe we can just skip ahead to when they weren't DC'd. Okay, so he starts jumping now. We don't need to skip ahead to this. And then they're going to start playing from this point. And we're still on the same game plan when we get into dampening. Crowd control the Feral Druid, crowd control the warrior, stack up the enemy targets for my warrior to cleave. Also, my mage will cleave. They're Necro Lord, so when they pop out the Deathborn, those fireballs are going to be hitting 3 targets. So stacking up the enemy and Spear of Bastion, cleaving them down like this is going to become increasingly more deadly. Here we can see the Warbreaker. So we Cenarian Ward, we Swiftmend, we Adaptive Swarm. Here you can see Thought Steal. This is what the icon looks like, which means this priest can cast Polymorph. So we need to be really aware of that, not running in their line of sight. But when you do this Cenarian Ward combo, you really want to tell whoever that has it that they can play aggressive. So warriors can go in battle stance because they're going to be so durable with that cooldown that you want to maximize their damage. Now the enemy team starts getting desperate. Their mana is really low. I stun the Feral, and we end up getting Dive of the Sword, even with no control on the Priest. And this is because the Feral is doing a significant portion of the healing to be able to stabilize the Warrior. But when you become the target, you want to start I started pulling them away from the Priest, but I actually ended up later on in the game pulling them on top of the Priest and just cleaving them. But that was much deeper into dampening when it became more unstable for them to recover. Here I get stunned in a really awkward spot. I decide to use my Trinket. It was overlapped with Bark Skin. And this is something that I don't recommend because now if I get stunned again, I won't have an option. I can't use Bark Skin because on cooldown I can't Iron Bark in a stun. I'd have to pre-Iron Bark or pre-Tranquility. So this puts a lot of stress on you as a Druid if you use your Trinket and your Bark Skin. If you are going to Trinket, I recommend using Iron Bark because it can't be used while stunned, but Bark Skin could later. Now that I've survived though, I want to crowd control the Feral as much as I can. I try to Hibernate, they shapeshift it, then I try and go for Cyclone. I get pummeled on it. They end up using the Dome here, which is going to be a very large amount of damage reduction. So probably not going to get the kill right now, but I would still like to crowd control the Feral if I can. I'm sitting through a full fear at the moment. I'm telling my teammates that. Looks like they're going after the Warrior. I don't have Cenarian Ward, so I'm going to end up using Iron Bark here just to keep the Warrior at a healthy amount of health, and so I can go for a Cyclone. And then when I get the Cyclone on the Priest, I could try and Hibernate the Feral. I could try and remove the Feral with other means, but right now Hibernate would be the best. Hibernate the Feral Druid, stop the Feral Druid from healing as much as possible, try and cast clones again. The Priest used the Trinket during that setup to continue healing while the Feral Druid couldn't. But while pushing like this, I don't have Bark Skin and I don't have Trinket. So this is actually very dangerous. So I'm going to get Adaptive Swarm on myself, and this is the tip earlier on in the game. For your automatic Frenzied Regen, that Adaptive Swarm is going to make it basically heal you to full, and that's my safety precaution when I don't have a Bark Skin. I'll just save the Adaptive Swarm, put it on myself, get blasted and heal to full. The Feral Druid's chasing me. I don't know if they want to stun clone, so I'm bringing the Feral Druid in line of the Mage so that the Mage can help me. And then I charge to the Priest. I stun the Priest, and then I tell my Mage to try and sheep while I CC the Feral Druid because the Priest is already on Clone DR from Dragon's Breath here. So we try and sheep the Priest, and I try and clone the Feral. I get stopped on it. Regardless, dampening is getting pretty high at this point, so we're just going to jump into bear form. and we're going to start tanking them because they've been attacking me on and off. We have Barkskin again, so I try pre-flesh crafting a stun here. They end up pummeling it, so I'm going to Cenarian Ward, and I wanted to Swift Mend it, but I probably should have just gone into Bear. So now I'm going to have to Barkskin, and I tell my team Mind Games is the only way we can lose right now because I'm stunned in line of sight of the Priest. So I warn them, Mind Games is the only way I lose. I need to get out of line of sight of the Priest, and I need my teammates to do something about it. So that's all I'm saying whenever I'm stunned is stop Mind Games, assist me this way so that my teammates know that they need to pay attention to that. That's the biggest threat. Then we're just going to use Cenarian Ward to extend it on ourselves to be able to survive being trained. And this is where I've got to make a choice, like, do I want to bring them on top of the Priest? Do I want to... Well, this Feral Druid actually ended up just jumping off. I think he thought that I was going to jump off, so I'm just going to stay up top here. You can use Wild Growth or use Overgrowth here with Innervate for a big free heal and row of hots to give yourself a lot of durability. And both teams kind of just ended up tunneling down each other's healers in desperation to try and get a kill here because the mage is just so tanky. The Feral Druid off healing is so high that it's really tough to get a kill for either team. But I just want to control that Feral Druid, basically treat them like the healer, let my warrior go to town on the Priest, and if they leave my warrior alone, my warrior will kill the Priest in dampening, and eventually I'll control this Feral. So they've got kind of this checkmate position. Like, do we go back and help the Priest? Because if we do, then the Druid's going to roll full hots on the warrior, and we're going to get triple cleaved. But if we don't go after the Druid, how do we get a kill? So it's really stressful for them in this position like this, having your warrior train their healer and you just controlling the melee DPS. Here I try and Ursul's Vortex to put the Feral and Warrior behind this balcony away from the Priest. So they're in a really awkward position. And my mage is just free casting damage onto the Disc Priest. It was at this point in time where dampening is high. It's just maximize your damage, do as much damage as possible. Try and bait people behind pillars. Like here I'm trying to bring the Feral again behind the pillar to go for Bash. This is a stun with Berserk. So I'm telling my teammates Mind Games is the only way that we can lose right now. Mind Games needs to be stopped if it's attempted. They don't end up going for a Mind Games, but right there would have been the best time for them to do it. I may have needed to trinket if they were able to get it onto me, but I'm just going to line the Priest now at the pillar, bring the Feral back here. We get a Sheep onto the Priest. The problem with sheeping the Priest in dampening is that they will actually regenerate mana while they've dropped combat. You can see they're already going up, 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 up. They maybe regenerated 1.5k mana in that polymorph, and we got nowhere on the Feral or the Warrior. And that's because the Feral and the Warrior are just supporting each other with intervene, stuns, and healing. That's why I think it's better to attack the Priest and actually let the Priest be the one that's healing. I think that's what we assessed at this point in the game was like, why don't I just bring them on top of the Priest and we can just hit everything. We can get Ring of Fire on 3 targets. We can maximize our damage. We can kind of just run this Priest out of mana. Here we get stunned, so we're going to Barkskin. We're telling our teammates, hey, Mind Games is a real threat right now whenever I'm stunned. And then we'll go into Bear Form, Frenzy Regen, and we should be able to more than easily recover. And at this point, you want to tell your teammates, like, I'm fine. There's no way I die right now. When you have Frenzy Regen and Send Ward, it's basically impossible. And then I just drag them on top of the Priest when I'm the target. So now I'm off stun DR, sitting in Bear Form, basically just AoEing them, trying to get them in the Spear of Bastion, and look how much different the pressure is immediately from shifting to this strategy, right? Like, we cleaved them all to 50%, Feral Druid healed himself to full, but this Priest is now at 5k mana from attacking the Priest rather than trying to sheep the Priest. So I just want to stack them up on the Priest as much as possible, and that actually got them off of me. They couldn't attack me, so it's kind of this weird mindset, right? Like, why am I bringing them on top of the Priest? Won't they just kill me? But in reality, they actually have to run away from me because if they're standing close to each other, they get cleaved too much. As soon as I start pulling them away here, my Warrior's alone with their Priest. We have the Warrior in a polymorph. I'm bringing the Feral Druid up top to try and crowd control. I jump downstairs and I charge to the Priest. This is, again, to stack them on top of each other. They're going to get hit by AoE CCs like Dragon's Breaths or Incaps, and we're just going to go straight for the Priest. And we end up getting a kill on the healer. And a lot of times with Feral Druids like this, going after their healer, going after their Priest ends up being a really good strategy, just because the Feral Druid is just not a target. They've got so many passive ways to survive, so many unused ways to survive that it's going to be really challenging to get a kill. But going after their healer, suddenly we're able to end the game a lot faster. Maybe risky to do this before dampening, again, because they'll more easily recover, and then they could turn it on you and Mind Games you, which is more threatening to you before dampening than it is to them, I think. But when you are in dampening, they're out of mana and they're desperate. This just really just adds fire. It adds timber to the flame, and they're going to burn out. But other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this commentary. If you did, make sure to hit the video with a thumbs up. Comment down below with your thoughts. What types of videos would you like to see? If you'd like to watch me live, twitch.tv/Supatease every day at 11 a.m. PST. We're doing viewer games. I've helped now, I think, about 60 people get to their desired ratings. And if you just want to play for fun, you can play for fun too. And other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. I will see you in the next one.